Hi and welcome. Welcome to the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Bellomo. On this podcast, we discuss all things estate planning and elder law and other things as we see fit. And we have a lot of fun here, and I'm really looking forward to today's topic, which is why workshops. So, for those of you who know anything about the system and the process that we have at Bellomo and Associates, what we do when a client calls into our office is that we ask them to go to a workshop. In the estate planning context, it's a 2-hour workshop. Medicaid's probably about an hour and 45 minutes. Special needs planning is about an hour and 15 minutes. And probate and trust admin, probably each about an hour and 15 as well. And what we say to people is, if you come to the workshop, then we will give you a free consultation with a team member to look at your specific fact pattern to determine whether or not we can help. And if so, what would the cost be? Now, without context, that may or may not make sense. Why are you requiring me to go listen to something? What if I don't want to? And the answer to that is, we'll certainly meet with you. We'll charge a consult fee like every other attorney would. And then, we'll just go through it like normal. And if it works out, it works out. And if not, certainly that's okay. But what we prefer and what our entire process is at Bellomo and Associates is education first. So the purpose or the reason that I do what I do is because my mother was ill when I was 2 weeks before the bar exam. And, we were looking for all the answers and wanted to know, well, what is a nursing home? What is assisted living? What's personal care? How and why are they different? How do you pay for each of them? Is there any government funding for any of them? Will dad lose the house? Will dad lose what he worked his whole life for? What are the options? How do you care for mom? What is hospice? What do we do in that circumstance? And I looked at the surgeon and, basically said, what do you think? What are the answers to these questions? And he shrugged and said, I have no idea. I do surgery. I do it very well, but at the end of the day, I do surgery. So you should talk to a lawyer. You should talk to someone who can guide you and give you advice and answer those questions. And I said, well, all right. So we went to one. And it was a $300 consult fee. So before you could meet with the attorney, you had to pay the $300 consultation fee. No problem. I have no issue with that, right? So we met with the attorney, and then at the end of the hour, I was sort of expecting answers to the questions. What's the plan? How's it going to work? And essentially I got, well, if you hire me today, we'll roll over the $300 consult fee into the planning fee. But if you step foot out of this office, you forfeit the $300, and then you're responsible for, the total cost of the plan. And the plan is $15,000. Well, he didn't tell me what it was going to do, how it was going to work, what was the benefit that we were going to receive. So I left. I wasn't overly happy. I went to another law firm, and the exact same thing happened. So now I'm out $600, and I still don't have the answers to the questions. Now I'm frustrated, right? Now I'm annoyed. I'm irritated, and nothing else. I'm also hopeless, right? I don't know the answers. My mother just had surgery. We're sitting in the hospital room. We're sitting around my mom asking questions, not knowing answers. And then on top of it, to have spent $600 and still not know the answers, tough. Really, really, really tough. So ultimately, I made a promise to myself, to my mom, to my dad, to my family, that would not happen on my watch. What I underestimated was the fact that, you're 20, 26 probably. And I was really lucky over my life that I was able to not only get a JD, but also then continue on, get a master's in taxation, get a certificate in estate planning, become a certified elder law attorney, which there's a 19% pass rate, at least at the time that I took it, to pass to become a CELA. So very tough. And I was broke. I mean, let's call a spade, right? Completely broke, not knowing where to turn, not knowing what to do, not knowing what the answers were. But I knew one thing. I needed a job. I needed a job. The only initials that mattered after my name were the job, right? Forget the LLM or the CELA or no. Job. Now, when I got the job, worked at 2 different law firms locally in New York. Loved both of them. Different experiences. Learned a lot. What I noticed, a couple things. One is billing practices are billing practices. And most lawyers follow the same model, which is the model that I was used to, that I experienced. $300 consult fee. If you hire us today, we'll roll it over into the planning fee. If you walk out, you forfeit your $300. And lo and behold, here you are years later, where I did the same thing. I reached out and shook my client's hand and said, well, that'll be $300 if you hire me today. We'll roll it over into the planning fee. And in that moment, I knew I became one of them, right? I was no different. I was not better. I was one of them. Why? Because I did the same thing, right? I did what they told me to. I followed their process. I followed what they wanted me to follow. But it was in that moment that I realized, holy cow, like, this isn't the way I want to do business. Excuse me. This isn't the way that I want to do business, or isn't the way I want to act or show up, and ultimately quit my job. I had talked to my mom numerous times, and, she kept saying to me, you're running from a profession you don't agree with. You're not running to something. You're running from something. And I in my head kept saying I was running to become a social worker or a teacher. Truth be told, I was running from being a lawyer and the billing practices with being a lawyer. And, when you're that young and you need a job, a job, at that point it was my second firm, and I was fairly confident that I didn't love where we were headed or where we were going, and ultimately opened up Bellomo and Associates. Now, when I created the law firm, it was extremely clear to me that we were going to educate first. There's no question the organization was going to be based on education, helping people, giving them the answers to the questions that they have. Gee, Jeff, if you give the answers away, do they still need you? Yeah, they do. There are some things that only a lawyer can do. And I don't worry about that, honestly. I have an abundance mentality. My feeling is the more you give, the more you get in life. So I don't worry overly much about that, but worth saying, worth reminding you, worth at least mentioning it here so that you're aware that that is absolutely a possibility. Excuse me. So that is where, estate planning ends. That's where estate planning begins, is the education. Without the educational piece, people are confused. Going in to see a lawyer is overwhelming to begin with, right? A lot of people have these preconceived ideas of what a lawyer is, or what a lawyer does, or what's the purpose, and what we're trying to show from our perspective is we're no different. We are you. We are in the community. We go to the same grocery stores. We believe in the same things. And what happened to my family in that hospital room should not happen to people like it did to us. I want you to have those answers before that happens, before you're required to find the answers to the questions. That's what you want. So fast forward a few years later, right around 2010, I joined an organization called Lawyers with Purpose. And the founder is Dave Zampano, who is a dear friend of mine. And ultimately, I found exactly what I was looking for. A national organization that taught a workshop, that gave ultimately a free consult if you go to the workshop, and for clients to get answers to all their questions before they need them. And that, as soon as I saw that, I said, this is the model. I mean, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. And I'm unrelenting because that happened to me and to my family. I will not allow that to happen to future subsequent families. So because it's a passion for me, there isn't anyone on the line today that is knocking us out, or that we're not going to get the full education, or that we're not going to get credit. We are 100% giving the education. We have it in-house, and we have a link so that somebody can watch it from home via the link. So it gives plenty of opportunity for a person to watch it at home, watch it with their family, come into the workshop to watch it live. Depending on the circumstance, will depend on sort of which way is best for you to go. Now, I will say, in the estate planning context, we're currently offering workshops on a weekly basis in York and in Lancaster on a bi-weekly basis. In regards to crisis Medicaid planning, we're about every other week in York. We do have, obviously, the ability to schedule one-off workshops or have me come and speak or another team member speak. We'll handle those one at a time. And also, certainly, if you're in attendance, you can still watch a link later if it helps. Most people don't need that, but I like to offer it so that you don't feel pressured to know 100% of the answers to the questions before you need to. That is certainly not what we want to promote. We want you to be ready, get the education, and then if the timing is right, make the decision. If it's not, take your time, and then ultimately make the right decision for you and your family. Okay, so from the educational side, it makes no difference to us, really, whether you watch it in person or whether it's online. Now, I will admit, in person is nice because you get the feedback of the room, you hear what other people have to think, you hear what questions people are asking. Believe it or not, when one person asks, typically there are several people in the room wondering or thinking the same thing. So, to my mind, that is all the more reason why we want to pay them a small thank you, water, whatever you need to do to make them feel welcome and, necessary as well. So, all right. At the workshops, do you serve food? Well, we do have cookies. We do have water. We do have coffees and teas. The reason that we don't do a full spread is because what we find is when people come to the workshop for the food, they're not there for the right reason. They're not there because they're ready to move forward. They're not there to process the information to make a decision, right? So that is the one thing that we've noticed is they're there because of the food. So we do not provide food other than cookies and coffees and teas, but that to us is the way that you kind of weed out the who's here for the money, the potential, who's here for the right reasons to ask the right questions. So that is one of the things that we try to encourage is the workshop in person so that you get the energy from the room, you get the energy from the speaker. When you're dealing with kind of more obscure areas where you start to get into like family law, we would refer those types of things out. If you're doing like a guardianship, for example, we currently refer those out as well. It is too difficult to have a court calendar and a calendar that's booked by an internal team member that's not dependent on the court system, because of course they're going to grab the first available, not care where it is, just pull it. But you have other meetings, right? You have other obligations, you have other things that need to be into consideration. So we like to give as many opportunities as we possibly can, so that getting the education is not something that can be put off. Now, we do allow people to pay, a $400 consultation fee and get access to the test or get access to the questions pretty much instantly. But that is not the foundation of the house that we were working on earlier today. We were working on a much larger home earlier today. This one would be much simpler, even though there might be a value of $650 on the business. There's really a couple clients here and there, but at the end of the day, it isn't going to be as ridiculous as what we kind of thought. So to us, certainly education is the king. Education is what separates us from other law firms. When we have a family that wants to protect asset after death, we do what is called a revocable trust, and then we do separate share trusts for the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but by using the process that we had for regular clients, we use the same for professionals or people working with other companies, to be able to ensure that we're getting the information we need, we're getting the results we need and want, so that everybody is on the same kind of playing field. We do watch Medicaid pretty closely. We have made the national championship a couple years in a row, and by who I mean the rowing national championship. My sister-in-law Becky is the head rowing coach at UCF, so we have had the opportunity to watch her and visit her in all kinds of different places, and it's certainly a heck of a lot of fun to be able to root for a college team that you admire and that you look up to. At the end of the day, you can't put a price tag on that. And it's certainly a lot of fun, and watching these crews in the national finals or in the national quarterfinals or consolation finals, the amount of want that is in that room or is on that field is just humbling, and it's breathtaking. So I would like to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for joining us today on the podcast. I do want to remind you that nothing that we said here today is to create an attorney-client relationship. If you would like to form one, please call the office at 717-845-5390. And as long as we are open, we'd be more than happy to help you. Monday through Thursday, we're 8:30 to 12, 1 to 5. And on Friday, we are 8:30 to 12:30. No, scratch that. We are 8:30 to 12. We are closed from lunch from 12 to 1. And we close the door at 2, although the door will be locked after 12 o'clock. And it will be up to the team members on offense or defense to reset the spikes back to the way they were. So, anyway, that is what it is. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on our podcast. We thank you very, very much for joining us and for listening and for understanding a little more about why it's so important to watch a workshop, why it's so important to watch a link. Because once you understand the material, it's much easier to make a decision. And you don't have to be overwhelmed in making the decision because you had a 2-hour workshop and time to digest it. So, thank you very much for attending the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show. Remember that this show, and no other show for that matter, should you take legal advice from, it does not constitute an attorney-client relationship or attorney-client privilege. If you are seeking advice in your area in estate planning and elder law, please contact us at 717-845-5390 or on the web at www.bellomoassociates.com. Thank you very, very much for listening today on our podcast about workshops and why they are so important. And we look forward to seeing you on an upcoming episode. of the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show. Please, folks, don't forget,